North Alabama School for Organizers presents Fireside Chats, intersectional education through interviews with the organizations and people making real change right now. Listen, learn, and organize with NASO and Fireside Chats.
Harm reduction is it's all about like meeting people where they're at. It's not about trying to make decisions for anybody else. It's not about trying to force somebody to complete abstinence. It's not. It's about keeping people alive and safe and healthy and allowing them to make their own choices.
Welcome, folks, to the North Alabama School for Organizers Fireside Chats. These chats are just meant for, for information to get people, basically people who are interested in learning more about your organization, or our motto is to, educate to organize. And we're about trying to educate organizers so they'll be more prepared, to go out into the community where they're working. And the good thing about the virtual here is that they can pick it up at any time on our website or on YouTube. And, we generally have one of these every 2 weeks. But we also have other classes, that people can attend. We have some just fantastic classes coming up in May. We're going to kick off with one, which Introduction to Radical Politics. And then that would be on a Monday. A Tuesday, we're going to have U.S. imperialism. And that's going to be a great topic to talk about the late 19th century and 20th century. And then we move on to Thursday. Thursdays, we will have several classes, which will be University of the Poor, Poor People's Campaign, National Coalition for the Poor, and a winter offensive that we'll be talking about. And so in July or June, we'll start up one with the history of U.S. imperialism. And other classes that we'll be adding. And we've had a lot of classes in the past, and American history and culture of American Indians, Native Americans. So part of it is, we want to get to and talk to as many organizations and people, who are actively hands-on, doing organizing and community work. And we know that, you folks are definitely doing that. And so if I could just ask if you could give us the name of your organization, your names, and basically a little bit about you. My name's Hy Thurman. I'm the, I guess the dean of, you ever want to call it that, of the school. And so, we'll be able to introduce ourselves here. It's so great to have you guys aboard here. And
well, thank you. I'm Morgan Farrington, founder of GoodWorks North Alabama, which honestly is at this point GoodWorks Alabama, all of it. I am working in, the short answer is drug user health equity. The long answer is long, so I'll go ahead and pass it to Aubin.
Hey, my name's Aubin Cawthon, co-founder of GoodWorks, and also outreach worker for Ross, the Recovery Organization of Support Specialists. So at this point in time, I do a lot of work on the sidelines and kind of behind the scene with Morgan. Face to face, I work with Ross as an outreach worker, helping to collaborate and empower individuals to seek any kind of recovery that they're looking for.
Yeah, awesome. Ben?
Yeah, I guess I'll be co-hosting today. Ben from Spice Radio. I was just impressed by how much stuff GoodWorks seems to do, because you got such a big list on working with the homeless, gender and sexual orientation support and substances, like that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's all, so I don't know if you guys know this, but like every kind of person is at risk of having substance issues. So there's a lot of intersectionality, and you get marginalized enough as somebody who uses drugs, but it's compounded when there's all these other issues. So poverty, housing insecurity, food insecurity, and quite frankly, it's nearly impossible to address your substance issues if you don't have a solid foundation with housing and food, especially. So we try to address those. I mean, it's a priority to address whatever the person in front of me says they need addressed first. But if it's left up to me and the way I would run the world if I could, we're going to address those basic needs long before we do anything about substance use issues. For some people, it straightens itself out once you've got a solid foundation. Your world can be really destabilized, like over $20. A friend of mine was at risk of going to prison, like prison, over not having an ID, because he was going to have difficulty getting an above the board job without an ID, which would mean he was in violation of parole, but he also didn't have any money because he didn't have a job. And his wallet was misplaced at some point during his arrest and all of this, So what did he actually need? Did he need a job, or did he need a license? Did he need an ID? So we try to take a look at what's really the issue and then address that to the best of our ability. It's no barrier access. And that's really, I think, where we get into dealing with so many avenues of service. Everybody's got the same basic needs, but you start getting into these details and it gets a little switchy. So, we just try to help everybody the best we can.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people take for granted, like when you're applying for a job, they ask for your address. And if you're living in your car, where does that mail go? Where does your acceptance, like if you don't have a cell phone, where does your callback go?
Exactly.
And there's so many things to get on. I wanted to ask you guys, thanks again for coming in and talking to us, but specifically, do you mind defining some of the basic stuff for people that don't know, like what harm reduction entails?
Aubin, you want to take that one? You're rusty because it's been so long.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I've been throwing elevator speeches for Ross for the last few months. So
change tracks, boo.
Harm reduction it's all about like meeting people where they're at. It's not about trying to make decisions for anybody else. It's not about trying to force somebody to complete abstinence. It's about keeping people alive and safe and healthy and allowing them to make their own choices. If I have contracted diseases as a result of my substance use and the avenue of which I use, and my physical health dwindles significantly, obviously, and my likelihood of that self-care is dwindled also, so trying to help people stay safe, trying to help people stay healthy and loved and cared for and seen, and then just like being wherever they need us. So
radical acceptance, radical compassion, everybody deserves like a fair shake, especially the people that make us the most uncomfortable, probably, oh, look, it's my grandma.
Oh.
Awesome. I wasn't nervous before.
You gotta watch your language now.
Hey, Nanny. Oh, it's connecting.
Okay, it's talking.
Hey.
Hi.
Can she hear? Nanny, turn your speaker volume up.
I can hear you.
Awesome. I can hear you. You don't even have to yell.
Oh, well, I don't even know how I got here. Carrie helped me. We just started
That's
clicking
amazing.
buttons.
And see, so we were just going over what harm reduction is when you teetered in here. I'm not exactly sure how you got there either.
Well, I'd like to say that we're so honored to have you here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is
Queen Jay.
wonderful. We're the North Alabama School for Organizers, and we're so glad that Morgan and Aubin joined us.
Nanny is quite the little radical herself. She's
Right.
she's ruffled a few feathers in her day.
It had to come from somewhere, right?
But it was
Yeah.
good raffling.
That's
There you
right.
go. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, no, this is all honest. I got this the good old fashioned way.
Yeah.
It's great. I didn't have to work on it at all.
I was gonna ask which one of y'all was in the program, like was working with the program first, and did you both rope each other into it, or what?
I saw Morgan set an event in Huntsville, and I saw the words harm reduction, and I was like, dude, Huntsville, yes, let's do this.
Right.
And so I met Morgan, or we knew each other kind of, but like we like really connected that night. And she said, you really want to do this? And I said, yes. And so we started. She had already done a ton of footwork beforehand and a ton of marketing, and like just really trying to see what needs to happen here in North Alabama. And honestly, like full transparency, man, she has done some amazing work up here. I jumped in and I said, yeah, let's do this. And then I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. And I was offered the opportunity to kind of do something to get paid to do this work. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to make those decisions. So,
Yeah.
So Morgan
it's not
really is the
unfortunate,
reins to this. I continue to work with her, and we get to collaborate from, like she said, two different sides of it now. And we can still work hand in hand. But yeah, Morgan, founder, badass, she's the one.
Aubin approached me, and now it's my mom too. Cool. Y'all.
Family, yeah.
So it's a family
Oh,
reunion and also an interview, I guess. But yeah, so Aubin approached me after the first like public event that was held, which wasn't even held under the name of GoodWorks. There was no organization. This was just me saying like, Huntsville, there's an issue. What are you guys willing to do about it? Who is down to like, shake things up a little bit and be a little bit more empowered, right? And educated about what to do. And Aubin is quite frankly the least flaky person I've ever done anything like this with, right? And while that may not be saying a lot, y'all, it's saying so much. Like, Aubin would actually show up on time to my like 45 minutes or 3 days late or whatever. And, it's just kind of a byproduct of this work. I'm on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I am at the mercy of Zoom scheduling. I'm at the mercy of the needs of people, because to maintain zero barrier access to care, I can't say no a lot. I mean, obviously there are things to which I say no, but like, it's not very many things. And I do my best to make compromises and get people help, because I mean, it's not hyperbolic to say they could die because I don't like get up and put something on my porch or something, so couldn't have done it without Aubin. And I don't think that the move to Ross was like an unfortunate thing at all. It was a little bit disruptive in the moment, because why wouldn't it be? But like, also all of COVID was happening all at once. Like, this was April or something after the shutdown. It was really, there was just a lot going on. Thankfully, like, resilience kicked in, and I just didn't, it's just what it is, right? Like, we just roll with it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Could you take us through a typical, what would happen if you, and how do you get the individuals or whoever that have addictions? How do you get them and what do you do with them in your program?
So that really depends. Through my own experiences and networking, well, first things first, I was born and raised here. Third generation Huntsvillian, very deeply connected in town. I can't live in 5 Points or go to BP or whatever BP is now. I can't do that without it taking like 45 minutes because I'll see everybody and their mom. So I know a lot of folks, and the opioid issue is so far reaching that you can't throw a rock and not hit somebody that's been affected by it. So you just start talking to people. Also, like, I was a bad kid, so I know plenty of people, and the ones that are still around I'd like to keep around, and just started making conversation about it. And gossip travels pretty fast here. That could be good gossip or bad gossip. So it's a small community, word got out, and when people show up or call or hit up the Facebook page or whatever, first question is like, what are you needing? I don't even like hand them a menu, it's what do you need? Is it safe supplies, like safe, clean supplies? Is it hygiene items? Is it housing? Is it referrals to where you can go and get like a pregnancy test and not get reported if you have drugs in your system? Is it, these things? Hell, I've hooked people up with clothes for interviews out of my own closet. Like, what do you need? And then from there, like, what are your goals? But like, let's address the things that are most stressful now. What's the chaos in your life that's got you to my door?
Is there any like service in particular that you found that just surprised you after starting the whole, after starting GoodWorks, like that kind of stuck out to you that you weren't expecting?
Not in a positive way, no. I've been surprised by some of the attitudes, the prevailing attitudes on individual levels within some organizations, if that makes sense, that unfortunately kind of bleed through in some of their practices, maybe just because stigma is an impossible thing to overcome. We can't expect people to get equitable treatment at a facility or in medical offices or at DHR or whatever if the attitude of a manager or a supervisor is that all drug users are bad. They're all these like horrible, crusty, homeless people, and Narcan is enabling them, and everybody should just go ahead and OD, and that's a self-solving problem or whatever. That attitude bleeds into the work and the services. So I don't want to like name anybody in particular or any organization that I've noticed that kind of attitude at, but I've definitely tried to do some work to counteract it.
Have you had any problem with the police in trying to intervene with some of your?
I don't, but I don't go out and do the outreach work as much because of my involvement at the state level. I don't want anything to damage my ability to go and advocate for people. And it's urban camouflage, I'm trying to just stay out of the line of sight. Aubin, can you speak to?
I can a little bit. I know of a couple of individuals who through various sources have acquired the ability to offer clean using supplies to people, and kind of reported back to me as I asked, what's the overall feel out there, and this is primarily in the encampments in town, just so that. People who need access to clean using supplies, clean hygiene, anything, everything.
Yeah.
And so they reported back that like they had a conversation with the community officers about like, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. And the community officer said, okay, and just kind of turned their head and walked away. I know that some of that, I don't know our full audience here, but some of that is that he's a middle-aged white man. And that's just a reality. But he's also well known around the community, and he has certain titles behind his name that give him a little bit of entitlement when it comes to interactions with police officers and authorities. But he is able to get things to people who need them without lashback from the police. So that's huge. So it's not completely transparent and in the open in the community, but by word of mouth, people are able to get what they need. So
I have a couple of projects in the works to try to get biohazard containers for disposal purposes out at some of the camps, but then they did what they did with the camps, and so now I'm like pumping the brakes, and it's all very confusing. But a friend of mine works with whoever they contract with to clean like city right away, and they said that it was a nightmare down there for syringe litter. That's going to happen if you don't have anywhere to put them. Just like it's going to happen if you don't have anywhere to throw your soda can. I advocate very heavily for syringe service programs in the state, the legalization of syringe service programs, and the widespread use of and advertising for those services. That's some people's only contact with medical professionals, and it's absolutely their only access to safe disposal of syringes and other medical equipment. There was an issue, I think, towards the beginning of the COVID lockdown stuff, where they changed the rules about legitimately acquired syringes. You couldn't go to the pharmacy to get them, and you couldn't do like your swap out there, even if you were a diabetic or on HRT. So people then, very many people who were on, fixed incomes, etc., had to start paying for delivery and pickup services of their biohazardous medical waste. So now not only do we have people with their illicit substances that are having to covertly dispose of their means of use, we also have people that are diagnosed with medical issues who don't have an affordable, accessible way to dispose of these things properly. And the idea that all these services are just for drug users is preposterous. It's a place to go get a snack. It's a place to go use Wi-Fi, or it could be. There's all kinds of services. You can do rapid HIV and HCV testing, and then get people linked up with healthcare after that if there's a positive test result. A lot of these people wouldn't have access to that at all. And if you're aware of the CDC's designation for our state with ending the HIV epidemic, you'd probably want to prioritize that. But I don't run the state.
Yeah. I know back in the 50s was when they really started the war on drugs. Actually Eisenhower was very big on, starting a program against, heroin use. Basically, was a lot that was going on, and marijuana use, but it was a lot of that was geared toward and aimed at the Black community.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
the Black musicians. Okay, and they use that, you know, the way Reagan would use the welfare mother, or they use that as, you know, stigmatizing the Black population of drug use. But
I mean, I'll go ahead and just name it by name.
Yeah.
The drug war is inherently racist. It is
Yeah.
absolutely a tool of the government to keep people in prisons because it's a self-feeding machine. They deindustrialized city centers. They sent men to war, got them hooked on heroin while they were there. And when these men returned home, there was no economy for them to come home to except for crack and heroin dealing. And so that's what they did. So like, we created the issue, or they, I guess, created the issue. I would venture to guess that 90% of the negative repercussions of drug use are things that we created by creating drug laws, drug policy. Your kids don't just vaporize in front of your eyes because you like smoke crack once. You know what I'm saying? Or like do LSD or something. They don't just disappear. No, DHR takes them from you. You know, people need to be allowed the room to mess up. People need to be allowed the room and the agency to medicate themselves, especially if it's something that's helping them function. So, you know, sorry.
It's very racist, and it still is. I mean, you know, if you look at the people that are targeted now, of course, it's the poor and the people of color, those communities that will be, you know, get arrested, get the sentences, and the bad drugs, you know, that they'll take, but you know, the people in the suburbs are doing the same thing, you know. Except
right, it's just prescriptions.
They don't classify that as a, you know, a racist program. You know what I mean?
There's far less police involvement with the perceptibly more white problem of pills. And you know, I would venture to guess that that's a money thing. I'm not certain. I'm not a numbers guy. But the fact of the matter is nobody gave any kind of a shit about it until it was like Karen and Karen's babysitter gorking out on oxys in the pickup line, you know, at school. So I've got people that I work with on a pretty regular basis who aren't using those drugs, and they are regular and long-term users of other substances, and they noticed that nobody cared about that problem ever, and still don't. It's still icky. It's for the poors. And you know, they still feel left out, and it's making them angry and making them isolated. The isolation that people feel is immense. I mean, huge. That is easily the most fatal part of a drug problem, is the isolation and the stigma.
Yeah.
Far above any adulterant of product.
Yeah. I mean, you know, even recently with the George Floyd, you know, trial, where they tried to criminalize him, you know, as being a drug user. And that's the real reason that he died was because of drugs, which wasn't true at all. But yet that's how they stigmatize people, criminalize people. And that's just a part of society. And I think what you're doing is just wonderful in educating people, you know, and that back in the 60s, I was involved in a drug abuse program. We named it Emerald City. But, you know, that was one of the first on the north side of Chicago And we lasted about 2 months before, they kicked us out of the place where we were, because we were accused of bringing drug users into the community. So I know that, what you're doing now is really, really admirable, in helping these folks, because these folks get into drugs a lot of times because of poverty,
Mhm.
and
trauma.
yeah, trauma in their lives. Some of them maybe, a medical issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And, watching your friends just die left and right is just perpetuating more trauma. I mean, if you consider like what happens if a kid loses one or both parents, and to a substance use issue, and then they're a ward of the state or whatever, I mean, chances of that kid going on to become another person who's got a substance use issue is really high. So how do we counteract that? What we need to do is like keep people alive long enough to figure it out.
Yeah.
Dead people do not get into recovery. Dead people don't get better.
I think what you said about the stigma surrounding it is like touches me a lot, because I've had multiple friends that have died of overdose that I had no idea even used those types of drugs that they died of. And I was wondering if you had any ways or things to approach people, or just to get the discussion going on like whether or not there is a drug problem, because it's just such a terrible, it's like the worst surprise you can ever get.
Again, without being coercive about it, I just make it very well known that I'm a person that you can talk to about what's going on. I make it known that if you need to call me at 4:00 in the morning because you need to do something, but you don't need to be by yourself when you do it, I'll sit there on the phone and make sure you keep talking. I will come to your house. I will show you videos that I know exist of how to do it correctly. I will, whatever. I'll give you the email address of whoever can help you out with what you need to be safe, whatever, and never bring it up and never judge you for it. And, chances are like, not only did I do it, but I did it while I was drunk and like really stupid in a bar. Like, it's really, really hard to like shock me. And like you get a cookie if you do, because I'm just so thrilled to be shocked again.
I think also, oh, go ahead.
Aubin's got a lot of experience with this as well.
I think also just normalizing talking about things,
Mhm.
like as a society, we have taught and learned how to keep everything like, I'm good, don't worry, it's fine.
I'm fine, this is fine.
Yeah. And it's okay. It's okay to say when I'm not okay. It's okay to say when I'm struggling. It's okay to say when I need help. It's okay to say when I don't understand or when I don't know. And the way I do that personally is just in my day-to-day interactions with people. I talk about my feelings so they know they're safe to talk about. Like I don't. That's the word. Like we've had enough of this like macho game about how we don't talk about stuff. Like.
Right.
Saves people's lives to have safe spaces. So that's a huge one. Also, like creating those spaces for people to go to be involved in, knowing that that there's a phone number they can call to never use alone. Knowing that those things exist, getting those resources out there. We have pins that say I carry Narcan.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a real clear like indicator that you can approach me about this.
We
So
also have protocol for how to respond if you're a bystander, how to respond to overdose, whether it's via like administration of Narcan or if you're calling for EMS, but are concerned for your freedom and safety. You know, there's steps that you can take to be more secure in that. And I, you know, Aubin, like in your line of work, I feel like you probably encounter people that are really, really, truly wanting to find recovery. And I think a lot of times they're at higher risk. And I'm curious if you can sort of speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So you, in general, by the time people make it to my side of things, they've either encountered some sort of massive consequence and they're looking for like, oh, let me dodge this real quick and see what I can do, or they're at the end of that rope where they say, I've got to do something. I've got to do. And the high risk, absolutely. A lot of times what we see is people who want help, they want to address it, they want to get help. But as a result of state availability, bed availability, detox availability, there's no beds. There's no beds. We have, don't quote me on this, I think we have a total of 18 beds for detox in the entire state of Alabama that is funded by the state. That is a state-ran facility. One facility, 18 beds total for the state. Not enough. So a lot of times what happens is people get to that point and they lose hope. And when I've gotten all the way up here and then I say it's not happening, I drop quick. I go way back. The other thing we see a lot, we actually just saw it last week, is people go to detox. We get them a bed, we get them in, they're in detox, and then they have to wait on a bed for inpatient residential treatment. There's nowhere to go. There's no safe place to go in between those two places. There's about to be. We're working on it. But we had somebody, they got out within 24 hours, they were overdosed and dead because they went right back to the same environment. I am a person in recovery. I choose complete abstinence for myself. I know the importance of that safe space. A lot about that safe. You know, I can't go to the same place that I was shooting dope and expect with a week out of it. You know, like it's just not happening. So definitely resources and availability. Like I just touched on, we're working on Alabama Department of Mental Health is working with some Oxford House trying to get us safe space housing in between detox and residential treatment for people who aren't in need of detox, to get them off the street, out of a bad living situation, out of an abusive situation, out of a using situation, and into a recovery environment until they can get their long-term beds. So some of those resources we're touching on, but I could talk for days on the lack of resources.
What about Matt? What's your experience, not personally, but as trying to get people placed into MAT programs and their willingness to do it and the ease, like the barriers? Because that's honestly, that's something I'm just haven't been able to get familiar with here.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's not a lot of access to it.
Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, MAT is medicated assisted treatment, i.e. Suboxone, methadone, things like that, Subutex. Alternatives to replace in your brain. And so with Ross, we do work a lot with people who are seeking out medicated assisted treatment. The accessibility is there. If you got, I don't know what it's at now, like $15 a day, you can go get your dose. That's doable. I used to come up with that to get my dose out on the streets. I came up with it to get my dose in the clinic. So that's not the barrier we're seeing. The barrier we're seeing is a lot of times we have Huntsville as a metropolitan area, and then we have everything around Huntsville. And we forget and get tunnel vision and forget about the lack of resources outside of Huntsville proper. And we have people with no transportation, no resources for transport. I had someone begging me out of Morgan County, can you please get me to a clinic? My resources don't allow me to do that. You know, like I can call everybody I know to call, but I personally can't. So it's still, yeah, it's still, there's that lack of resource there, you know, and we do have multiple options for MAT across I know specifically across North Alabama, mostly centered here in Huntsville. Affordable, you know, there is long-term recovery option there that people progress and do great with. You know, I've known many people to do it, but the lack of resource we tend to see most with that is going to be transportation, and then people who struggle to stay on the MAT program, who maybe have a dirty urine. But just, I think the lack of education on what addiction really looks like, and allowing people that space to figure it out. You know, a lot of times you'll get programs for and then you got somebody who's been on medicated assisted treatment for a year, who just goes back to the street, and that's where you see a higher likelihood of overdoses.
Yeah, I've seen in homeless people a lot, you know, different types of addictions, but a lot of times they're self-medicating. They are, you know, there are psychological issues that go along with it, and you got to consider both. You know, I've seen people detox and then just go right back to it because all they did was detox.
Absolutely.
Me personally, GoodWorks in general. However, everybody that's involved with this organization is allowed their own approach to practicing harm reduction. I want to make that very clear. But as founder, I've got no problem saying I absolutely embrace the idea and am empathetic to the plight of the person for whom using drugs is the option. Some people are fine. Adderall and methamphetamine are almost exactly the same thing. You add salt and press it into a pill, and you've got Adderall. That's government sanctioned speed. And it's okay to do that. But if you can't get it because, say, some states don't expand Medicaid, so you can't see a practitioner about it, what are you going to do? You've been on speed since you were 7, and now you're 24 and booted off your parents' insurance and withdrawing from speed. Like, you know, there's just not alternatives for people right now. So I do my best to support people, right? It's encouraged, if you're going to volunteer or work with us in any capacity, that even if you don't feel comfortable practicing necessarily like completely radical acceptance of things, that you sit down with me and we talk about what your boundaries are and how we can make sure that you're protected from crossing lines for yourself, but that also, like, you're not going against the idea of the thing. If someone were to approach me and say, like, what is the most absolutely right-wing Christian, like just goose stepping way I could approach this, I would be able to find someone. But I can also get the exact opposite of that too. I want people that run the gamut. I just don't necessarily want to just set everyone loose out willy-nilly with the public. Like me, I wish I didn't necessarily have to be the spokesperson.
So if people are interested in volunteering, how do they go about starting that conversation?
Aubin?
You can contact us through the Facebook group. You can contact us via our emails, which both of us, yours is still the same, correct?
Yes.
Our names at gmail.com. So aubincawthon@gmail.com.
Oh, no, not Gmail. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. And just, you know, you can sign up and get with us. There's a multitude of different ways to volunteer. Oh, wait, GoodWorks, I'm sorry. Multitude of different ways to volunteer, from doing the IT work, to being boots on the ground in the streets, to marketing and advertising for the community. to setting up meets and fundraisers. I mean, there's a multitude of ways. So I think there's a lot for anybody and everybody who wanted.
Do you think that also, do you think that if we were to legalize drugs and treat it as a health issue, that a lot of people would be cured of a drug addiction, or at least be able to survive?
Addiction is like being in the Marines. Once you're an addict, you're always an addict, right? I
Mhm.
guess. I mean, for me, that's been the truth. But while I don't necessarily agree with the medical model, I am more than happy for the state to adopt it so that people can
Mhm.
start getting the help that they need. It's a step in the right direction, and incremental change is more change than no change. So I'll take
Yeah.
it.
I think the things that we start seeing if we legalize is that stigma that we're all talking about, that stigma that kills people. It's still there, but it dwindles. You know, people are still going to have their opinions, but it definitely dwindles on a larger scale. The use of dangerous substances that aren't tested, that aren't known, dwindles. You know, people stop getting drugs that they don't know what's in it. Much, you know, and it's legal. You know what you're doing and educate each other for it.
Yeah.
That issue in particular has hit pretty close to home fairly recently. And, you know, fentanyl testing strips are a thing that exist. They are illegal because they are on the list of paraphernalia in Alabama. They are legalized everywhere. The CDC and the federal government has said that you are allowed to use federal funds to purchase them for your programs, but they are illegal in this state. That's one of the bills that we had up this legislative session, was something to change that. Thanks, sweet potatoes. So there's been many people who have died, not because they hit rock bottom, not because they were habitual users or just these, you know, destitute, miserable, horrible situations. It's been people who thought that they were maybe doing one thing and it's got fentanyl in it, or any number of other substances. There's a couple of things I've watched pretty closely that are early alert systems. There have been, I think, 4 novel benzodiazepines recognized, like identified and named, and public health warnings have been released about these things. Fentanyl test strips won't pick that up, and Narcan won't work against it. Because it's a benzodiazepine. So that's your Xanax, your Klonopin, things of that nature. There are veterinary tranquilizers that are being put into general drug supply at this point that are causing major issues. There's, I think, 2, maybe 3 analogs to fentanyl that have been discovered, or not discovered as in their new drugs, but discovered in the States in our illicit supply. I mean, it's scary. It's really scary. And so this is no longer just, you know, like I was saying, this is no longer like the mental image you get of someone who's a long-term heroin addict or something. This is kids that are like being kids on prom night thinking that they're taking ecstasy or something, and turns out it's fentanyl. And that's just scary. That's terrifying. People don't have an opportunity to find rock bottom anymore. And I think speaking to people as if they don't want better for themselves because they haven't gotten there yet is possibly like a fatal mistake. And it just further isolates people. And we need to avoid that at all costs, you know?
Yeah.
We've brought up Narcan like a whole bunch, but do you mind just going over what it is for folks that don't know, and how you can give it and how you can get it, that sort of thing?
Sure. Narcan is an opioid antagonist. It effectively blocks the receptors in your brain that absorb opioids, which really rapidly reverses the respiratory depressant effects of the opioid, which is when you overdose, that's generally speaking what's going to be the cause of death, is respiratory depression. So there is a statewide standing order for naloxone. That means that everybody inside the borders of Alabama has a prescription. You don't need a piece of paper. You don't need a doctor. You don't need anything. You can go into a pharmacy, and as long as they stock it, you can get it. That said, that costs money. There's a lot of people that don't have money. There's a lot of pharmacies that don't necessarily stock it, and it's entirely up to the pharmacist about whether or not they do. They will bill your insurance. I've seen people pay $20 copay for 2 vials of naloxone and 2 syringes. It is 100% legal to purchase, possess, carry, and administer, so long as you're administering it in good faith that you know what you're doing. The only thing that you cannot do is pass your naloxone from one person to another, because that is distribution of a prescription medication. So I do not recommend that anybody goes and gets a massive supply and like sits on it and passes it out. That's gonna be illegal. However, we're working on that. We're trying to make policy changes in that arena as well. It's a freaking miracle. I've seen people who are absolutely not going to live walking around still today because of that drug, and it's amazing. I mean, Aubin, I don't know if you've ever Narcaned anybody, but I mean, it was profoundly life-changing when the first time I did it.
Yeah. And for the ones of you that don't know, if you have not taken an opiate and someone administers Narcan to you, it does nothing. If an infant has opiate in their system and you administer Narcan, it will just reverse the opiate. It will not do anything else.
There are no
To anyone,
contraindications.
anything.
There are no contraindications for the use of Narcan. There's no known allergies. There's no drug interactions. There's no reason. If you even kind of think maybe this person might be experiencing an opioid overdose, go ahead.
And they have it like a nasal spray and an injection, right?
There's the vials and there's nasal spray. They did pull the automatic injector systems, the Evzio systems, from the shelves, and I don't recall why, but if you have those, they're still fine to use. I think it's something about the cost of either production or the cost to the public. It's not a matter of efficacy. They work great. They literally talk you through it, from pulling the cap off through how long to hold it to the person and where to hold it to the, like, it's a small child could use those. The vials, I don't recommend unless you've got good dexterity and kind of either can sit through a training or will like practice kind of with it, like just do it, just practice, or go ahead and draw some up and have it. I don't know. But the nasals, one thing to be aware of is that all 3 versions are going to require a little bit of training. The nasal Narcan is a little bit slower because it's got to absorb through the mucosal tissues in the nose. And if a person's not breathing, it can be a little difficult to get it far enough back, but it does get there. I think that, the vials are the best way to go, but if you're intimidated by that, there are alternatives for sure. And it's, God, y'all, I can't tell you how many people I know that fortunately I still get to know.
How do we go about getting that training?
There is one available through Alabama Department of Public Health. Their website has that, has a link to where you can go watch a quick video. At the end of it, you give them your information and they mail you a kit for free. It's 100% free. It takes about 15 minutes, I think. I mean, I click through it fast because I know what I'm doing, but I think it would on average take about 15 minutes. And there are other routes, but I am not entirely sure at this point how Governor Meemaw would feel about our using those routes. So I would say stick to the pharmacy or stick to the ADPH website. That's I think it's adph.gov. I mean, y'all can fact check that real quick. You've got the internet in your pocket.
So if we could get a group of people together as in a class, you know, to get them to agree, you know, to carry Narcan,
Mhm.
would you be willing to come back and talk to us again, you know,
Absolutely.
in this, you know, what
I would
would
be
you-
happy to train you to my to the extent to which I am legally allowed to. For anybody to get CPR certified, they're gonna have to go get CPR certified, which I do recommend.
we should, yeah.
And then like your street medics, if you've got street medic courses with your school, I would recommend that they also carry Narcan to protests. And it might be a valuable thing to add to that training. I personally think that everybody on the planet should know CPR and be having some Narcan.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you know, we can't all afford EpiPens, but if I could, I would have one of those on me at all times too. It's like having tampons in your bag if you're a girl. Like, you just have them because you never know. Or Band-Aids or lint covered
Yeah.
butterscotch. I don't know. Just have it in your bag always.
I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, well, I don't hang around people who use, or I don't know anybody who would need it. And I'll always go back to this one specific story of a buddy of mine who he always carried it because, you know, he knows. And he walked into a McDonald's one day, and as he walked into the bathroom, he saw somebody out on the floor in the McDonald's. He went to get a double cheeseburger. That Narcan saved that kid's life. You know, he was the only one in the entire place that even knew to administer Narcan.
I have the exact same story, but it was a diner in New Orleans. It was 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and there wasn't even anything happening in town.
Yep.
Like, it was just bad. And I mean, again, save somebody's life, but if nobody had known what to do and nobody had had anything with them, that kid would have died, and everybody in that restaurant would have been affected by that. Like, you know, let's not underestimate the effect of what witnessing that does to people. It was traumatic for me to save my friend's life when I did that. It would have been so much worse had I just stood there and helplessly watched. And it's so empowering, you know.
Yeah.
It does give you a little bit of power and control over this issue that so many people have when you know that it's not this death sentence.
Well, I think Tom and Ben, I think we found our next class. I think we really should get some people together and do this training and the CPR, you know, and I think that would be a good, you know, a good class for us to hold. And if we could get you back, you know, and talk about it, you know, form a partnership, whatever.
Absolutely. I would love to work with your organization. Honestly, I think that we have a lot of intersecting ideals, and you know, obviously I don't charge for any of the work that I do for this at all. I did finally get the ability to apply for grants, so that's happening. We do take donations, but other than that, I don't charge. If I don't make another penny doing this work for as long as I live, that's going to suck, but I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
And just to plug real quick, the services that are offered through Ross are completely free to the individual and to the community. They're paid for through the Department of Mental Health. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there that we do primarily deal with people on Medicaid or not insured because we work with facilities that can't deny.
Yeah, and I'm just sort of brain rushing here and thinking, that it might be good to just get some of the general public involved, but also to get, and we work with a lot of musicians
Mm-hmm.
who may have contact, with people that might need this service. And I think that's something we could work on, and I'd love to put something together and get back to you about it if we could.
Yeah, absolutely. Drop me a line. I'm kind of I'm sort of the overseer with that part of stuff.
Okay.
Programmatic issues are me. Aubin is sort of the eye in the sky. Aubin keeps his fingers steadfast on the pulse of what is going on in town, because I don't get to come down from this office. Ever.
Now, where are you? You're in Huntsville?
I am, yes. And so, Aubin, you're still technically in
Yep.
Huntsville, right?
I'm in Huntsville.
Right
Okay.
on.
All right. Well, wow. This is wonderful. I mean, I
Yeah.
really think it's worth us pursuing, don't you, Ben? And
Oh, for
Tom?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you so much for the work you do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Very admirable and
Living to
There-
get high another day, y'all. Come on.
Yeah. yeah. Well, any questions for us before we go? We try to
Yeah, actually, I do have questions for you. So hi, I am aware of I'm aware of your pedigree, I guess. How did you end up in Huntsville of all places? After all of the things that you've done and all of the organizing and whatever, was this like intentional? Did you come here for work? Like what? Are you another engineer?
No, I came here because of a divorce
Mhm.
about 10 years ago. My nephew and he's also divorced and he had this like 3-bedroom home. I said, well, I might as well move in, And I was in Illinois at the time. I was in Chicago and really did want to get out of Chicago. So this was a good opportunity for me. I was not involved. I was involved somewhat, although I had been somewhat underground for a long time. After the murder of Fred Hampton and the Rainbow Coalition and all that. But I came out, when I got back here about 10 years ago. Although I continued organizing through all those years with the homeless and actually in the drug scene and in trying to get health services and mental health services. But I came back out and started organizing. We started the Homeless Construction Coalition, which Tom was involved in, and building structures for the homeless, and then other organizations, and continuing with the Young Patriots again and the Rainbow Coalition and all that. And then wrote a book just came out, and about the experiences and and then we were talking about how people get involved in organizations and sort of just fizzle out, because they don't stick to their values a lot. And so we thought some of us got together and thought we'd start a school, North Alabama School for Organizers.
I wish that I had the time, like the few times it's come up to do the school thing, it's just been at the wrongest possible moment in my personal life. But I'm just chomping at the bit to have the opportunity to go through like your organizers education stuff, because yeah, dude, it's so hard. Neither Aubin or I have any formal education on this. We're just like dedicated.
Yeah.
And I think quite frankly, like my experiences with drugs and like not letting them kill me have really added to my ability to just keep going, and some dumb luck. For sure. But I would love, I would love to pick your brain. Cause yeah, I mean, this thing has almost fallen apart half a dozen times, this week, because I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Or at least I don't feel like I do. And I think Aubin can probably back me up on that one, like, from his own perspective.
We started a class, we did have a class, and Tom was in the class, and others. It was called, if I can get the title right, Tom, Building and Sustaining Coalitions, Organizations and Coalitions.
Yes, I wanted to be in that class so bad.
We talked about, how do you sustain, these coalitions and these organizations, and how does an organizer keep going and other people get into organizing? And I think we went through like 18 different roles of an organizer, right, Tom? And from what I gathered, the class was good. A lot of people got something out of it.
It was.
But that's something we could do again.
I think that would be awesome. I wish I had the volunteer base at this point to just sort of like, I'll train yours if you train mine kind of a thing.
Well, there's ways of working it out. Even the Young Patriots, when we started that, it started out with 3 people.
Right.
The Panthers started out with 2 people. The Young Lords had a couple of people, but it grew into a national organization. So everything starts small and just build from there. But and what you're doing is the same thing that organizers are doing. You're meeting people where they are.
Exactly.
Not where you want them to be, but where they are, and that's where you start working with them, just right there. And I know some of these guys get tired of hearing this, but a good friend, Bobby Lee, who was a Panther, once told me, he said, you don't know where to organize, you go to your front door, you look out that door, you go to the back door, you look out that door, and then you go in, you look to your left, you look to the right, and then you pick a direction, because somebody needs something in those directions.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to run into somebody that needs the help. So, it's meeting people where they are.
Profoundly or not, this work has, like, quite frankly, I was the one who needed something. Mm-hmm. And like,
always.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that I would necessarily be like dead or whatever, but this has saved my life and just saved it from being miserable, saved it from being bored, saved it from being, a thing where I get to sleep or, but really, honestly, like being able to go out and do this kind of work saved me. And that's my big motivator. It's not that I want anything in particular for anybody. I want for me, but I really say all that drug user health equity stuff because that's a thing that I have to say in meetings. We don't just do that. We're just exactly like you just said. I mean, what do you need? Yeah. How can we help? How can we be of service? And if you find trends, then call it that, I guess. But I think we've given out just as much food as we have anything else.
Sure, you find people, you meet people where they are. You find out what they need, like you're doing. And then what I was very much into drugs at one time. And what got me out of drugs was a really bad acid trip.
That'll do it.
And that was very bad. And I can still remember that horror of that. Now, I've had several good ones before that. And it was good, so I kept doing it, But boy, there was one that I said, I never want any more of this anymore, and that's what turned me away from taking almost any drug, But, you guys here, I like my beer, but, I got a bottle of moonshine in there. I drink that, but,
That's hand sanitizer base.
Yeah.
Not moonshine.
Right. There you go. But yeah, I mean, that's these, Tom and Ben, they're encyclopedia of knowledge too, and, and what they know and other people in the school, and we'd love to be able to work with you and, because it's just going to expand the school, it's going to expand your program, and I think we could do some phenomenal work together.
Absolutely. And I'm all for collaborative efforts and, building coalitions and building network. There's nothing quite so efficient as a network of people who've had to be an underground network forever, doing things like, man, people that use drugs know how to get shit done quietly,
That's
like it's
survival.
great. Totally. At its roots, this movement is purely like Buddhist and purely anarchistic, and that's been such a empowering thing for me. It's so much about personal choice, personal responsibility, autonomy, and agency. What are you willing to do? What is it that you need the most? How are you able to bring yourself into this idea? Like, I hate to even call it a program. It's just a shift in the way that you think, just shifting perspective a little bit. Stopping using language and stopping using like, I don't know, just like I was saying earlier, the idea that everybody must be abstinent. Some people don't actually have chaotic use and a substance issue. It's just about safety.
I was talking to somebody earlier and trying to explain to someone who's not familiar at all about community organizing. And I said, it's people who are just being decent humans. Mm-hmm. And that's really, it's not this insane idea. It's about caring. It's about being there for other people. It's about being a part and active in your community.
Yes, you'd like to have this room. Huh?
It's not that insane, Mm-hmm. And I said that to this guy, and he was like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, just be a good person. Like, care about people."
That's right. And you organize every day. You get up. What do you do in the mornings? You get personal hygiene. You organize that. You go cook your breakfast. You take care of your kids. You take care of your dog. You're organizing all these things. Well, you're an organizer.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of, what you put into a priority here. And when you work with people, they're doing the same thing,
If you wear your seatbelt, you're doing harm reduction.
Yeah.
If you use sunscreen, you're doing harm reduction.
Yeah. And that's why some people think, well, it's so hard to be an organizer. Like you're saying, well, it's not very hard at all, as long as you meet the people where they are.
Exactly. I mean, bars are safe consumption sites. Cabs home are harm reduction. Like, we're already doing this stuff. It's just that the substances are a little different, and they've been criminalized and stigmatized. And we all know that if you start involving like the government and stuff, it's probably going to get bumbled up somehow.
Oh, it will. I guarantee it will. But anyway, well, I want to thank you folks for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to have been asked to be here. Really, this was great.
It's an honor for us, to have you folks, and we definitely want you to come back, because we want to work with you, and we want to educate people on what you're doing, so they can go out and educate other people.
I will run my mouth about this all day, every day, forever. I love having these opportunities.
Yeah.
So yeah, whenever.
Yeah. Ben, Tom, you got any comments you want to say, or?
Well, thanks again. And I didn't know about the adph.gov, so I'm going to share that ASAP, because that's huge. I wish everybody had some Narcan in their pocket.
I just dropped the name of another organization in the chat. It's called Never Use Alone. They've got a website where you can chat with someone, text with someone, or have a phone call if you are in a situation where you need to use a substance and you need to do so without being all by yourself. Someone who is like-minded will hang out on the phone And should you become unresponsive, they will call for EMS. They do their gosh darndest not to have law enforcement show up, but you are, you're monitored, and they do get a little bit of information from folks, but it is all confidential. There's no judgment. There's no BS. Like, I would never push an organization that did not have my participants' absolute best interest at heart.
Yeah.
And I fully believe in never use alone. We've saved a ton of people in the last 18 months.
Yeah, and both of you, your respect for those people really come across very, legitimately and honestly. And thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
for anybody who is searching out recovery, I just put the organization that I work for also in the chat, Recovery Organization of Support Specialists.
Good.
We have a 24/7 helpline number. You can call it and get information and resources in your local community on how you can get some help.
Yeah, I keep thinking about Fireside Chats can't get any better every time we do something like this.
Fireside Chats is a production of North Alabama School for Organizers. NASO seeks to empower communities through intersectional education and training. More information, including upcoming classes, at naso.network. Thank you for joining us for Fireside Chats.